your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us for our Week in Review. First Nations leaders in Alberta say they stand in solidarity against Premier Danielle Smith's planned sovereignty legislation. The chiefs of Treaty 6, 7 and 8 say that they'll work together to oppose the bill and its agenda. The chiefs held a news conference Friday in Edmonton to assert their inherent rights and jurisdiction over their lands and territories. Alberta's Justice Minister has said the Sovereignty Act will challenge unconstitutional federal encroachment on areas of provincial jurisdiction and will be the first bill introduced in the legislature in the coming weeks. Premier Danielle Smith held true to her promise and fired the Alberta Health Services Board. She has appointed Dr. John Cowell to become the official administrator of Alberta Health Services, who will take over the duties of the board effective immediately. Cowell served in this role during the Allison Redford administration, and it's the second time in a decade the Alberta government has fired the governing board of its health service and has replaced it with an administrator. This comes one day after she sent out a mandate letter to her cabinet for change. Meantime, opposition NDP leader Rachel Notley says the decision will add more confusion to the system at the expense of dealing with emerging problems.
Today's announcements does nothing to get Albertans a family doctor. It does nothing to address the specific calls from frontline paramedics to reduce ambulance wait times, and nothing to get children's medication into the hands of Alberta parents.
Children's hospitals across Alberta are seeing an influx of young patients who are sick and some who are seriously ill. At least 2 hospitals say that they're battling waves of kids with influenza, RSV, and common colds. An aggravated factor for the parents, is the lack of children's Tylenol and Advil on pharmacy shelves. Alberta schools are also seeing high rates of absenteeism due to a wave of illnesses. Meanwhile, Premier Danielle Smith says that she will not mandate masks in schools. Smith says anyone who wants to wear a mask is free to do so. She says her focus right now is gaining access to more supplies of scarce medicine and reducing long wait times in emergency rooms. Meantime, Edmonton's Public School Board has asked the province to have kids mask up to deal with the wave of viral illnesses. But Alberta's Education Minister Adriana LaGrange says she'll be taking advice from the province's new Chief Medical Officer of Health on whether to allow school boards to bring in mask mandates. Dr. Mark Jaffe, the newly appointed Chief Medical Officer of Health, says mask wearing will be a personal choice. Dr. Jaffe, who was the Vice President and Medical Director for Cancer Care Alberta, took the place of Dr. Dina Hinshaw, who was fired earlier this week. Hinshaw became a familiar figure during the COVID-19 pandemic, delivering regular updates on the spread of the virus and measures taken to contain it. Premier Danielle Smith has made it clear that she blames both Hinshaw and Alberta Health Services for failing to deliver the best advice and care for Albertans. Alberta's opposition NDP is pushing for the province to implement an emergency public health plan due to the shortage of children's medications, the spike in illnesses, and the absenteeism affecting schools. According to MLA Rocky Pancholi of Edmonton, 4 in 13 Albertans who have been hospitalized due to one of these illnesses is children under the age of 9.
We're calling for tangible and real action at all levels of government to acquire children's pain medication and fever medication and to work collaboratively to restock pharmacy shelves. Our opposition caucus has been inundated with reports and cries for help from Albertans whose kids have gotten sick and who have been unable to find necessary pain medication. There has been a major spike in cases of influenza, RSV, the common cold, and COVID-19 among children. We know that the major metro public school boards have reported tens of thousands of students being absent due to illness. This prompted our colleague and NDP Deputy Leader and Education critic Sarah Hoffman to write to the UCP Education and Health Ministers yesterday, demanding that they develop an emergency public health plan to further prevent the spread of illness.
A Conservative bill exempting farm fuels from the carbon tax has passed in committee. Now it's a matter of potentially becoming legislation. We asked Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas what is needed for this bill to become law.
What this bill does is it advocates on behalf of farmers to ensure that the carbon tax is removed from these essential things that a farm operation does. This bill has now passed committee and will be coming to the House of Commons. And once it comes to the House of Commons, our hope is that it will enjoy the same element of support there.
After the break, who was really in charge of Alberta's medical mandates during the pandemic? We speak with a lawyer who cross-examined the former Chief Medical Officer of Health. Stay with us. Attorney Leighton Gray has been instrumental in ensuring governments and corporate entities are held accountable for the pandemic measures while representing a number of clients who have fought COVID fines and vaccine mandates. While cross-examining Dr. Dina Hinshaw, he says she admitted she was only doing what the Kenney government had instructed her to do. Have a look. Tell me a little bit about the cases that you've been fielding since the pandemic started.
In the early part, we spent a lot of time fighting COVID tickets, and we had a series of high-profile cases involving, for example, Pastor James Coates in Edmonton. Many of your viewers will remember the triple barricading of the Grace Life Church that was occupied by RCMP, turned into a barracks. So we represented him. We also represented Timothy Stevens, a Calgary pastor who was jailed and who was fully acquitted. And we also represented hundreds of people in Manitoba, British Columbia, the Yukon, Northwest Territories who faced these COVID tickets and quarantine tickets. But more recently, our firm has become very involved in fighting vaccine mandates involving large employers, many of whom are government regulated, including CN, CP, Canada Post, Purolator, ATCO, and others. The big case that I've been working on with Jeffrey Rath, who's a lawyer in Calgary, is on behalf of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. It's a case called Ingram. And Ingram is probably the most significant constitutional case, and perhaps the most important civil litigation case that is before the Court of King's Bench in Alberta right now, because the result in that case will impact many, many others.
Okay, and I understand that you had the opportunity to question Dr. Dina Hinshaw on a couple of occasions. So what came of those testimonies? What information was presented there?
The most shocking thing and the most important thing for the purposes of our discussion today is that when myself and Jeff, when we questioned Dr. Hinshaw about her orders, she surprisingly disavowed ownership of them, which is surprising because when the governor of Alberta declared the emergency, they did not declare a public emergency in the sense that every single arm of government would have a say in what went on, and nor would there be any oversight by the legislature. Instead, they declared a Public Health Act emergency, which essentially set up a medical dictatorship. And I mean that literally. The wording of the statute says that Dina Hinshaw, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, could use any means necessary to fight the pandemic. So when she was asked about these orders, she did something that was rather surprising and very, very significant in terms of the case and the law in Alberta. She said that these were not really her orders, that she was really just the messenger or the transcriber, and that she was going to then Premier Kenney and Cabinet to seek instructions about what to put in those orders, so that they were not her orders. She was just an unelected official, and that these orders actually represented the will of the elected officials in the Alberta government. That was quite surprising. And of course, we found out, we argued in Ingram, that was actually illegal. It was outside of our authority to do that. And then, of course, in another case, in the CM case, Mr. Justice Dunlop said precisely that.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that. So maybe tell us a little bit about the Ingram case and how that differs from the CM versus Alberta case that Justice Dunlop is hearing.
We said that these lockdown orders, that they were a violation of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and therefore illegal, and that they should be struck down. We also argued that the way that the orders were made under the Public Health Act was illegal because it exceeded the authority of Dr. Dina Hinshaw. And we say that because under the Public Health Act, the whole point of declaring a Public Health Act emergency, and incidentally, there was no prior precedent for a province-wide Public Health Act emergency. Normally, these are local in nature. But the whole purpose of that was to set up somebody who was a medical expert to make these decisions and to formulate these orders. And so it defeated the very purpose of a Public Health Act emergency to have a scenario set up in which the so-called medical expert, Dr. Hinshaw, was going to lay people like the Premier and the Cabinet to get instructions about what to put in health orders.
For more on this interview, head on over to our YouTube channel. We'll be right back after the break. Independent MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat, Drew Barnes, met with Hal Roberts this week to discuss how Medicine Hat has been recovering from the government mandates and slower economy. They also talked about the need for traditional conservative values, smaller government, and every worker's favorite topic, lower taxes. Take a look.
There are a lot of business closures and a lot of people dealing with mental health issues and addictions during the pandemic as we're slowly making our way out here. How do you feel the people at Medicine Hat are doing now?
Our economy is not great. Still today, Hal, our economy is weaker. House sales are very, very slow now. The city is quiet. We don't have as much oil and gas development activity as we used to. It just came out in the living wage mechanism that somebody did, that Medicine Hat's living wage was, I think, was $17.32, the lowest in Alberta by quite a margin, reflective of perhaps our weaker economy. So yeah, we're still hurting, but again, to me, that's why government's got to spend less so they can tax less. Let's give our families hope. Let's give our entrepreneurs and our hard workers hope. Let's give our small businesses a chance to compete, to give us service, and to get back on their feet. We've got this situation now where we seem to just wait for one government handout after another, and picking winner and losers, the unfairness that creates, I don't believe is good for our culture long term. And I hope the UCP can pivot and start to spend and tax less.
You know, there's been talk of the Alberta government eliminating the provincial fuel tax once again. Do you think that'll make much of a difference here when it comes to the affordability crisis here in the province?
It will certainly help. You know, and I think it needs to be done, as well as reducing business and family income taxes. Hal, our blessing is our curse. Our oil and gas royalties are about to go up by at least $8 billion a year, as I think it's 5 to 8 oil sand plants have met their cost of capital recovery. So they're going to pay higher royalties. Let's use that money to reduce Albertans' taxes so Albertans can work hard and provide choice and services, and we can create the kind of culture that we've always had, where we work hard, we take risk, and we help each other.
Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas recently shared with us about the fact that the carbon tax will not be put onto a lot of the fuel vehicles when it comes to farm vehicles. It passed in committee with the Conservative Party, and it just passed, and it's now been implemented here. How well do you think that's going to impact farmers, the fact that you don't have to worry about carbon tax in a lot of the farm vehicles?
It will help, but there's so many layers to that carbon tax. It gets baked into every bit of transportation, every bit of manufacturing. So it's one of the more inflationary aspects of our economy right now. Probably second only to all the money printed that the Trudeau government did the last little while.
Drew, how do you feel about some of the smaller independence parties positioning themselves as maybe an alternative to the UCP in the next election? Do you feel that'll maybe split the right vote?
Well, first of all, choice is good for all Albertans. And Hal, if you don't vote for what you want, you'll never get it. So the vote splitting argument to me just doesn't hold a lot of water. And it just, reinforces the two legacy parties that are there now.
Drew, in your opinion, what will it take to ensure that the UCP holds on to power and fends off a charging Rachel Notley and the NDP?
Thank you. What it's going to take first and foremost is finding conservative values again. Family values, so families can prosper and take care of their choice in education and healthcare. What is going to take is smaller government and lower taxes. There's some things that seem like they're out there, but they're the foundation of creating wealth and strong families. Things like property rights, strengthening the rule of law, how we're living in this world now of catch and release with our criminal system. That has so got to change. And I think if the UCP government and Premier Smith were to focus on a government that spends less, lower taxes, and rural crime, I think they'd go a long way to get reelected.
Obviously the big cities are big battlegrounds too, Calgary and Edmonton. The UCP and NDP are both putting a lot of their efforts in there. What will it take for the UCP to hold on to some of those seats and secure some new ones in the bigger cities?
It's going to take a strong move from the UCP government to significantly reduce taxes. Really, when I was thinking, earlier about the Kenney government legacy, they reduced big corporation taxes down. I think we've seen some benefits of that, but not what we could. Why instead can't we do the same for families?
Next, we look past the political rhetoric regarding overcrowded hospitals and children and their seasonal colds and flus. Practical solutions when we return. Stay with us. With the opposition party here in Alberta talking about sick children and bare shelves, we thought we would speak with a nutritional health expert to find out if she was seeing an increase in seasonal illnesses among her clients' families. Our producer sat down with Josie Bosgra on tips and ideas to give your family a fighting chance against the cold and flus that we're seeing. Have a look.
Josie, we're hearing on social media that there is an increased number of sick children getting into hospitals right now. I got to ask you, are you hearing the same thing from moms and dads that you know?
Yes and no. I would say yes. It does seem to appear that there are more kids sick than usual this year, and that is true. I think in part that is due to the fact that a lot of kids weren't exposed to viral infections in the past few years. They're wearing masks, which can weaken the immune system. Largely, isolated, not enjoying like the typical things they do. So maybe like feeling a little down, and that all contributes to their overall health. So yes, I do think there is a larger amount, but I also think it's really normal at this time of year. There's always kind of an uptick in illnesses. The days are shorter. We're not getting as much sunlight. And when we are, we're like totally bundled up. So our skin isn't absorbing the vitamin D, which affects our immune system. What else? We're typically more sedentary, so we're not sweating as much. Our kids aren't like running around outside as much. The other interesting thing is most of the sugary holidays all in these winter months, and excess sugar can affect our immune system. And so with the kind of usual uptick plus the reality of the effects of COVID on these kids, yes, I think there is more than usual.
Gotcha. I think that for me personally, you mentioned something really important. It's the vitamin D from the sun. And we'll get into that that's probably part of the toolbox for parents. But do you think that there's something that parents can do around the house to limit exposure to maybe bacteria and viruses?
Yeah, there are definitely ways to support your children and your family's immune system, yours too. And we can talk about this, but I think the first thing to mention is I think we got to kind of bust through the fear of getting sick. Getting sick is actually good for us. Of course, in moderation, if we're getting sick like every few weeks, there's probably something up, but being exposed to viruses is good to build our kids' immune systems. And not every virus they're exposed to is going to give them symptoms. But when it does, I think we have to just embrace that. I think because of COVID, our response has been, oh my gosh, a symptom? I got to run and get a test kit. Something's wrong. But actually, your body's working if you're sick, right? Your immune system's fighting and you're building antibodies. And so not to focus so much on like, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get my kids sick. Just to kind of accept it as a good thing. But of course, there are things we can do to prevent illness. It's kind of basic, like rest, hydration, good food. I think one huge factor for the whole family is gut health. Over 70% of the immune system is housed in the human gut. And so when an individual's gut is imbalanced or a mess, so to speak, they're probably going to get sick when exposed to something. And so you can do that with your kids. I mean, eating a wholesome diet is a great place to start. You don't need all the fancy supplements and regimes for your kids to have a healthy gut. A lot of it is just diet. In terms of supplements, probiotics, that's one thing for the whole family that can help keep your gut healthy and keep your immune system a little stronger. A good quality probiotic to keep the bacteria in your gut balanced.
Just like our muscle system and our skeletal system, the immune system is also one of those parts of the body that, in my opinion, we can probably either disregard or enhance. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so disregarding and enhancing are a great way to put it. I think of things a lot about food because that's my scope is nutrition. And so disregarding or enhancing, I mean, every bite we take can either harm or heal our gut, which is really largely our immune system. And I think it's one of those things that's easy to forget about the impact of things that we do. So it's easy at Thanksgiving to like eat a little bit too much sugar, let our kids eat a little bit too much. And then Halloween is another one. Your kids can eat candy without it like totally destroying your immune system, but it's all in that moderation. And so, like you said, I think we have to regard it, not disregard it. We have to be aware of the effects of things on our immune system. Another big thing is how we're cleaning our home, the non-food items that we're consuming through our breath and on our skin at home, that affects our kids' immune systems. And all of this also affects our immune systems. We're obviously talking about kids, but this can be applied to adults as well.
When we return, a look at the top local and regional news of the week. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Ron Sakamoto has been promoting music artists in the Southern Alberta region for over 50 years. He was honored by the city of Lethbridge just over a week ago with his own Music Wall of Fame at the NMAX Centre. Now he will be heading to the Juno Awards next year, where he will be given the Walt Greeley's Special Achievement Award. Sakamoto says it will be an amazing night and that he is humbled by the award.
Walt Greeley is one of the most influential people in the music industry, and that's why he co-founded the Juno Awards. And he was instrumental in as far as music concerned in Canada. You know, he's one of the co-founders of a lot of awards and the music scene. And to receive it is unbelievable, really. You know, especially by a Karis, because it's a pinnacle of achievement, you know, in Canadian music because it covers all genres of music.
Sakamoto also recently accepted the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal for his work in the music industry. Thanks to a $5,000 donation from a Lethbridge pharmacist, the cost of tuition is becoming slightly more affordable for 5 lucky students at Victoria Park High School. Vishal Sukadia, owner of the medicine shop, says that he paid for his education through low-interest loans, and he wanted to help the next generation of students. The recipients of the scholarships sent him letters which he says were quite emotional.
One kid, she wrote in a letter that nobody even passed the high school in all her family. Like she will be the one going into the undergraduate in entire family. With the help of the scholarship.
Since the moment that Vishal from the medicine shop reached out, it has been a difference maker. I think it has given us hope for some of our students who would otherwise not be able to afford to even begin the idea of planning for post-secondary, whether post-secondary includes the college or different programs within the trades or the university.
King says the donation will help students to finally realize their dreams. Lethbridge has been crowned the winner for the best tasting water out of the 9 competing cities at the 2022 American Water Works Association Western Canada Conference. Doug Cope with the city explains the secret behind our best tasting water.
Like it's purely a subjective competition. They have a panel of people that are tasting and sniffing the entries, and so there's some of the things they're looking for is whether there's an aftertaste, a chemical aftertaste, or whether there's an odor that might impact the customer's experience.
The city says tests on water are collected multiple times a day, up to about 32,000 tests on treated water every single year. The Christmas season has officially kicked off in Lethbridge with the launch of the annual Christmas Hope campaign. CEO for Lethbridge Family Services, Sandra Mintz, explains how they help during this time.
We put together gift bundles for children in need and families in need, and other organizations concentrate on food. And the thing that we like about our collaboration is we feel like we work so well together to create kind of a safety net. And it's very important to us to steward the public trust well. So we share a database and we share, lists to make sure that there isn't duplication of giving going on. And we're able to support each other's campaigns.
Well, the Lethbridge Center is hosting a fundraiser campaign for those who are in need in our city. The Sock It To 'Em campaign was started as a way to collect socks and give them to community groups such as the YWCA Harbor House Streets Alive mission. The socks are then distributed to our most vulnerable. Gail Petrie, an organizer for the campaign, that says that she started the initiative over 20 years ago.
We started in 2000. I worked at an elementary school, and I noticed kids coming to school not properly dressed, with no boots or shoes, and especially socks, bare feet. My staff and I were having coffee, and I said, we should start collecting socks for some of these poor kids.
December 15th is the last day to collect the socks. At that time, seniors and children from schools in Lethbridge will come together to build a sock mountain before they're distributed to those who are most in need. Well, with the holiday season about to become top of mind, more campaigns will be kicking off. After the break, we speak with the Salvation Army about a worldwide Christmas tradition.